All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to start today doing a little demo for drawing feet. Obviously, I have set you guys up with a couple of handouts. We don't have to use these. You can make up your own, but I thought that might be helpful for you to get you started, or at least have you look at something. First things first, I'm going to kind of teach you something that's not on those sheets. It's a little way of drawing the feet when you're looking at your foot straight on. So if you're standing straight up and you have a character straight up looking at you, generally your toes are going to point straight out. And that's something called foreshortening. So there's a couple techniques. One technique I've come up with over the years that I think is helpful as far as drawing feet, and I'll show you right now. The first thing that I start off with is I draw a hamburger bun, like the top of a hamburger bun. It's basically a flat bottom with a semicircle. It's not really bumped up very high, pretty low to the ground. It's like you see on a cheeseburger or something, just the top of it. This will represent the front of the foot, or the toes, or the front of the shoe. Now, since we're not going to draw it straight on like this, we want to give it a little bit of a tilt. You could pick either side of this shoe to then do that. What I'm going to show you is going to be the heel. What I would do is I'd come up just a little bit, and I would just basically make, a little right angle. So this would be the front. This would be a little hint at the heel behind it. And this can just go straight up. Then on the top of this hamburger bun, we'll go to the middle of it, right to the middle of it. And whichever side you decided to put this little bump on, you're going to make a diagonal line going towards that side. It sort of turns upwards. Okay. That, it might kind of look almost like a horse's hoof, but that's going to be the beginning of our foot. If you have the toes pointing this way, on this side we'll put a little ankle to sort of bump out on that side. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some details to kind of transform this into a shoe. So what I'm going to do is just double up the bottom here a little bit, sort of round off that little edge over there. I'm going to treat this as the front of the shoe. Up here is the top of the foot. This is where the laces would go. So I'm going to just kind of draw some shoelaces. Up here could be like the tongue of the shoe. You can kind of make the rest of it over there if you want. You can put a little Nike check on it. And relatively pretty quickly, you can kind of make that little horse's hoof into what looks like a foot. And we can add socks to it or whatever else that you want to do to it. I'm going to do that one again for you in a second. And this time I'm going to start off again with that hamburger bun. And that again, remember, is going to be the front part of a foot. This time I'm going to decide to put the bump for the heel on the inside over here on this side. I'll go up and then just make a little bump so it's up a little bit and out a little bit. This can go pretty much straight up. On the top of that bun, right in the middle of the top of it, whichever side you made this heel, you can make a diagonal line going towards that side and sort of curve up to the rest of the leg. This time I'm going to do a little something different with the details. Again, whatever side the toes are on, you're going to put the bump for the ankle on the inside. And this time what I'm going to do, I'm just going to kind of round this stuff off a little bit. And then on this inside part, I'm going to go ahead, just make a big old curve like that. I'll double it up here. That's going to be a big toe. And all I'm going to do from here on out is just kind of add these little backwards letter C's. Kind of make those all into toes. And once I've spaced them out, you see I like to draw them light at first. I'll just go ahead and sort of finish them off with a little toenail on them. And then from that last little toenail, I'll just connect everything to the rest of my foot. So that would be the way you could draw a foot that's sort of pointing at you or looking at you. And again, there's any variation you want to make on this, all you really have to do is just change the details. But you start off with those basic shapes. It gives you the opportunity to really sort of set this thing up and make yourself any type of shoe you want to have. So those are just a couple little things that we could do as far as how to draw a foot. If you decide to go off the sheet and use the ones on the sheet, everything I just showed you with the hands and the feet that I just drew, all of them apply to this as well. And what I would tell you again is, no matter which one you pick, you should try to work with basic shapes at first. So in this case, I would look at this thing and I would look at, there is a large sort of rectangular part to the top of this, and then there is a round sort of oval to this. All right. Instead of just following around the outside of the shapes, I give myself a little bit of a rough idea of the basic shapes, and then without spending too much time at any one spot, I simply kind of add some of those details and I compare. And if this looks like it's a good start, then I'll spend more time sort of refining it and changing it. And you're going to find that if you did the hands fairly well, the feet are actually, for the most part, going to be a little bit easier. They really don't have the same amount of moving parts. What makes the hand challenging a lot of times is the fingers and everything else that goes along with that. So, you know, for this one here, it's really just going to be about getting the basic shapes to start with, and then you can kind of just spend your time on details. And again, you could change the details up fairly easily to make it a different looking type of shoe. But what I want you to get out of the things that I'm showing and demoing is that you should always attempt to do the basic shapes of your objects first, and then spend time on details. And like in this case, I could try to draw these little forms and these little shapes, and when I feel like, well, that kind of looks like the same shape as what I'm going for, then spending the time on the details makes sense, because, you know, the details will take some time, they take some effort, but if you're putting them in the wrong place and they're not the right size, it really is not going to work well for you. So in this case, you see that by drawing it lightly first, I have a lot of the options here to come back and sort of adjust, change, and fix them as I need them to be. And if you spend 5-10 minutes on one little part of your drawing, what you're going to find is you're very reluctant then to erase it or start over. And a lot of times what happens is sometimes you can't really fix something, you really just need to start it over again. And when I feel like it looks sort of kind of like the way I want it, this is when I come back with that much darker contour line and I really sort of neaten things up. And you'll notice when I do that, I don't really have to come back and erase too much, because those other like guidelines that I drew earlier, they tend to just kind of fade into the background. And you know, you could spend all the time you want on the little details, but I recommend that you spend that initial time sort of laying out the basic parts of the shoe. And again, the shoes you're going to find are they're simpler than hands. They're weird shapes, so sometimes you really have to pay attention at the very beginning. But other than that, they should be relatively easier than you might find the hands be. Up top over here, you may also find some more complicated feet, and that was on the second handout as well. And really, when you go about doing those, the same thing that just applied. You want to work with the basic form first. So when I look at this foot, I'm thinking of that middle part of the foot really like I used to think about the palm of my hand. This is like the body and everything else gets added onto it. I want to look for the angle and the overall shape and how it tapers in. Then the toes, I'm going to treat all of the toes as one big piece to begin with. From there, adding, you know, the ankle and the other sort of main parts over there, that might take a little work, and when you look at it, you might decide, well, I want to change it here, I want to make this bigger or this smaller. But when you work in the manner that I work, where it's sort of light at first, and you have the chance to sort of lay things out, this gives you the chance to sort of move things around as you see necessary and make quick adjustments when things look wrong. I think almost everybody knows when a drawing doesn't look right. You guys, no matter how well you draw or not, you're very good critics. You've seen a lot of imagery and you've seen a lot of drawings, cartoons, animations, things like that. So you generally know if something doesn't look right. The biggest thing about when you're learning to draw is sometimes you realize it doesn't look right in your drawing, but you also don't have the courage or the desire to erase something that you spent a lot of time on. And by working the way that I'm showing you right now, you sort of get a lot of the light layout stuff done very quickly, and that gives you the opportunity to, once you see something isn't in the right place or the right size, to come back in and make some adjustments to it and changes to it. So you might see some of these more realistic feet. Don't be intimidated. Simply just look at them and try to break them into simplified shapes. Like this one over here, I'm going to start with the triangle. It's already been made for me. I'm going to work really, really light at first. That way I can always make minor adjustments to my drawing. Look and see how those shapes interact with each other. Where does this intersect? How much of it intersects there? And then again, when I look at this right now, I don't like how thick and heavy I made the ankle. So now I can just adjust it a little bit and adjust the heel. And I haven't erased or destroyed 10 minutes worth of work. And even in my advanced age and the amount of time I've been drawing, I still make enough mistakes where I need to go back in, look at what I put on the paper, and then realize, you know what, I didn't quite have that right. And from here, that's when I would start to come in with my darker contour line, and I would then kind of refine the drawing a bit, make it a little bit more finished looking. And for these practice drawings, I'm very happy to see any of your practice lines and any of your light lines that you do earlier. That way I can really tell how you got to where you got to, almost like in math class where you have to show your work to kind of show how you solved the problem. I like that in terms of learning how to draw, and that way I can really sort of assess. So just like the hands, what I'm asking from you for this one is 5 different feet. You could see in the time that it took me to record this video, I've already done 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'm not asking for a ton, but I'm asking for quality. So spend a little time with them. I know they're not as complex as the hands, but they still do require some work. Just like in the previous project, once you're done with this, make sure that you come in, snap a photo of it, all right, and submit that photo as part of this assignment. This video is done.